Dana's calling from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Dana, you're on the air.
Yes. Hi. Hello, Tom. How are you?
I'm very well. What do you think, Dana?
Well, actually, I think your guest today sounds very educated. Unfortunately, he sounds like an educated fool, in my opinion, based on his beliefs and how he believes. I'm unsure how you can look at nature and the things that are unexplainable by scientists and unexplainable by mankind and not say that there is a God that has formed these things on Earth.
But is nature unexplainable by scientists?
A lot of things in nature are unexplainable by scientists. They're researching on a lot of issues, and a lot of times they do make theories on things, but a lot of things they're still in the process of researching, and some things they'll never know, because God is made by someone other than ourselves.
So it's the majesty of creation that you think refutes Christopher Hitchens?
Correct.
The mystery.
The mystery of how things were formed. I mean, yes, we can, philosophers over years have philosophized, about how things were formed, and they've asked questions and have gathered answers to these questions that they think is the reason for things and the reason for life, but they have no direct answer for these things.
Christopher Hitchens, Dana listens to you and hears her words, an educated fool.
Well, I shall endeavour not to reply in kind, but I think that it must have been noticed by anyone listening to that repetitive, fallacious little intervention that she seems to imagine that what isn't explained can be explained by her. I mean, I wouldn't presume any such arrogance. That she actually, what have we been wasting our time for? With all these inquiries into nature and the natural order, there's a lady in Virginia Beach who knows all about it. We should have asked her, and she even knows who's responsible.
I'm imagining she says she doesn't know.
And by the way, it's isn't it amazing too, how the religious keep telling you how humble they are, and what humility they possess, when they make the most fantastically arrogant claims for themselves.
But maybe she would see it as the opposite, that she has the humility not to pretend that she understands all, ultimate mystery, that she throws that in the hands of God.
Without specifying anything in particular, she said there's much that's unexplained, but don't worry, because she has the explanation for it. She didn't sound to me as if she was qualified to make that call. I don't consider myself qualified to make it either, but I think it's pretty well understood that such advances as we do have in the understanding of nature and of the origins of the cosmos have been very considerable in the last couple of centuries, and they've been made usually in the teeth of religious opposition.
Let's take a call from Lansing, Michigan. Kathy, you're on the air with Christopher Hitchens.
Hello, thank you for taking my call.
Yeah.
I tend to agree with you. I grew up in the church, and over the course of many years, I have come to the conclusion that once upon a time, religion served a purpose because people didn't know why things happened, and they needed to have some feeling that they did know. But at this point, I think humanity needs to grow up. It's ridiculous what people do in the name of something that we don't even see, we don't know it exists. It's not tangible. And the things that people do to each other in that name it's disgusting.
Grow up out of it, you say. Christopher Hitchens, will that happen?
Well, I think it has happened to a very great extent. I mean, most people live their lives as if we had a secular compromise and a separation of church and state. And they're willing to respect religion as a private belief, but they're not willing to have it intruding into the public sphere, and they're not willing to have nonsense taught to their children in schools. I think that's a reasonable compromise. The reason for the pushback that you and I have both mentioned a couple of times now is because religion insists, and I think it's innate in it myself, in breaking bounds. I mean, after all, if you are like the Reverend who we were just talking to, convinced that he knows a way of curing Hodgkin's disease, but no reason at all is given by him to suggest he has any idea why someone gets Hodgkin's disease in the first place. Does God give it to her? He would never allow that. God only takes it away. You see? I think such opinions could be very dangerous, because if people thought that faith could heal, they wouldn't get on with medicine. And whenever people have resorted to the coloured water and the miracle cures and so forth, there's been a huge increase in disease. The campaign by the faithful against inoculation, for example, because it was an interference with God's design, is still going on in large parts of the world. It's the reason for the failure of the international anti-polio campaign, for example, and the resurgence of that horrible malady which has destroyed the lives of many more children than have been prayed over in that ludicrous church in Indiana. So you see, it isn't just a difference of opinion. It does have real-world implications, and I think the last caller understands that.
Kathy, Dana, thank you for your calls. I want to turn to a theologian. Joining us from Cincinnati, Ohio, is Bill Leonard. He's professor of church history and dean of the Divinity School at Wake Forest University in North Carolina, an ordained Baptist minister, author of Baptists in America. Dean Leonard, thanks very much for being with us.
Hello, Tom.
You've been listening. You've read the book. You hear the bill of complaint. Christopher Hitchens says religion, not true, coercive, source of violence. There's a better way. What does it leave you thinking?
Well, time's moving quickly, so I'll jump in quickly. One thing, just to thank Mr. Hitchens for the book. I'm probably going to use it as a text next year in some way or another. One of the things I like, it's a fine survey of issues related to world religions and philosophy, and you even know about the burned-over district, and I thought there were only 3 of us in America who knew about it.
So, the burned-over district? I'm sorry.
That's another whole issue, but
okay.
This area of western New York that was swept by revival fire, so even having that mention caught my attention.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, to begin, that, one, you're right about a lot of the issues you raise, and it is embarrassing to read it all put together in print for those of us who talk about these things in classes here and yon. I do think you give short shrift, however, to the dissenting tradition, particularly in Christianity. I won't speak about other world religions. You do mention Archbishop Romero, but Sojourner Truth and John Woolman and Bishop Tutu. You sort of write Gustavo Gutierrez and liberation theology off in about 2, I think, pretty shallow sentences. And I wonder why. I think one of the reasons that I continue to participate in religious communities is what I learned from the 17th century Baptists, who were also hanging out in Holland in its more tolerant era. And that was this understanding of an anti-establishmentarianism, this concern for conscience, and so I think you see that that's there, but because it doesn't fit your argument, you sort of dismiss this. And I'll give you 2 quick examples. One is you say, in no real sense, as opposed to nominal sense, was Martin Luther King a Christian. And then you do a similar thing about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, both of whom you admire. King, you raise some interesting questions about, but you seem to know that that King wasn't a Christian, or suggest that, and that Bonhoeffer was more of a humanist, and therefore his faith didn't really compute. And so I wonder how you can be critical of people who claim to know the mind of God when you're claiming to know the mind of Bonhoeffer and King. And I think one of the reasons that's difficult for you is because they do represent that dissenting tradition that stands over against this kind of establishmentarian religion that you rightly challenge.
May I, before we go to Christopher Hitchens, may I just check one thing? You're the theologian, you're the ordained Baptist minister, but in your response to this book, are you writing off religion in the main and immediately retreating to the dissenting tradition to defend? Are you saying in the main he's right?
I'm saying that the significant illustrations that he uses clearly reflect what religion becomes, and it's embarrassing to read, of course, because of the way in which a kind of how quickly religion establishes itself and wants to become culture dominant and then set the agendas for everybody
in earthly ways. Mm-hmm.